Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kim Sayet, Director of the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. David Skorton, Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution. Miss Amy Sherald, portrait artist. Mr. Kehinde Wiley, portrait artist. Mrs. Michelle Obama. President Barack Obama. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Kim Sayet, Director of the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery.
Good morning. My name is Kim Sayet, and it is my pleasure as Director to welcome you to the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian Institution. Every commissioned portrait involves 4 people. The first person is the sitter, who already has a larger-than-life persona and may, understandably, be rather curious to see how his or her likeness will be captured in perpetuity. In a spirit, then, of building anticipation, I bid a warm welcome to the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, and his wife, former First Lady Michelle Obama, who we honour today. The second person is the artist, who tries, in the face of public scrutiny, to stay true to her or his own artistic style and still transmit a sense of their sitter's internal spirit to external audiences. In many ways, as much a reflection of themselves as an insight into their subject, the portrait artist must remain unique and, to quote the poet Baudelaire, realise a character. In the spirit of that bravery, I am thrilled to welcome Kehinde Wiley and Amy Sherald into our collection. This museum had the pleasure of showing Kehinde's work in 2008 as part of the Hip Hop and Contemporary Portraiture exhibition. And Amy Sherald we celebrated in 2016 when she became the first woman to win our Outwin Buchiva portrait competition. Kehinde and Amy are taking the best of portraiture traditions and adding a fresh layer by absorbing the influence of fashion, music, hip-hop, pop culture and painterly inventiveness. Together, they are transmitting the energy of urban America into the contemplative spaces of high culture, and I, for one, am thrilled. The third person involved in making a commission is the patron. And as is tradition, we make an art match and then we raise private funds to do the work. I am extraordinarily grateful to all of those people across the country to whom we came for support, and those who took a leadership role: Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw, Judith Kern and Kent Wiley, and Tom Pegas and Don Kaposha. Finally, It is the fourth person that is possibly the most important, you, the viewer, and generations to come. At the end of the day, the sitter, the artists, and even the donors will disappear, but it is the audience that will remain. Every portrait, no matter when it was created, is contemporary because it is completed when someone has a personal encounter in their time. Ultimately, these portraits will live to serve those millions of future visitors looking for a mentor, some inspiration, and a sense of community. Ironically, for this art museum, it's not what you look like that counts. It's what you do that matters. And through the skill of a talented artist providing a window into the life of a president and first lady, people learn history and their place in it, set the course of human events in context, find empathy for others, and perhaps create a sense of connection that leaves them feeling a little less alone. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium David Skorton, Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on a very, very special day at the Smithsonian. President Obama, Mrs. Obama, Vice President Biden, Amy, Kehinde, Kim, Provost John Davis, regents, commissioners, and distinguished guests. It is an honor and privilege to share this morning with you. As you probably know, we have two occasions to celebrate today. First, in just a few moments, President and Mrs. Obama will unveil their official portraits. And second, today is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. What you may not know is that President Lincoln once credited a portrait with getting him elected. A photograph by the great Matthew Brady taken before Lincoln's famous speech at the Cooper Union in February 1860. For many Americans in 1860, this was the only Lincoln they knew. The Brady image appeared on the cover of Harper's Weekly, in newspapers across the country, and on buttons and leaflets throughout the campaign. Today, that photograph is on display here at the National Portrait Gallery. Lincoln may have given Brady too much credit. There were probably a few other reasons he won the presidency. For example, I hear he was a pretty good speaker. But his comment reflected something that was true back then and remains true more than a century and a half later. Presidential portraits have a particular power to capture the public imagination, to move people to think about America's leaders and indeed American society itself in new and unexpected ways. This is why the Portrait Gallery has been collecting presidential portraits for 50 years, and it's why we have expanded that collection to include our nation's first ladies. We are excited to continue both of those traditions today. And I want to stop for a moment and ask you to join me in recognizing the ongoing innovations of Portrait Gallery Director Kim Sayat and her magnificent colleagues who are continually reimagining ways in which the Portrait Gallery can inform and inspire the American public and beyond. Kim, congratulations. Now, if you think back just a little bit, you may remember another image that drew national attention just a couple of years ago. It captured a tender moment at the opening of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Former President George W. Bush was embracing, or rather being embraced, by First Lady Michelle Obama. One headline called it, "The Hug Felt Around the Country." I can only speculate as to what exactly made that image so moving to so many people. But when I look at that picture today, I can see clearly some of the many qualities that millions of Americans have admired and continue to admire in Michelle Obama for over a decade. Her warmth, her kindness, her ability to connect in real and meaningful ways with virtually everyone she encounters. As the first African American woman to serve as First Lady, Michelle Obama blazed a trail for women and girls of color and inspired countless women and men and children across the United States and around the world. During her 8 years in the White House, she was a tireless advocate for causes that transcend partisan politics, fighting to end childhood obesity, encouraging young people to pursue higher education, supporting our service members and their families, and working to ensure that girls around the world can and will go to school. Even more impressive, she did all of this while raising 2 remarkable daughters, and did it always with good humor and grace. Dear to my heart, Mrs. Obama also continues to be a devoted champion of the arts. And we need the arts so much in every day in our lives. As First Lady, she helped give African American artists a greater presence on the walls of the White House, a commitment that her selection of Amy Sherald to paint her portrait reflects, and one that we at the Smithsonian here are so proud to share. And now it is my honor and privilege to invite Mrs. Obama and Amy Sherald to unveil the portrait.
Good morning, everyone. Let's just start by saying, wow, again. Let me just take a minute. It's amazing. Wow. How are you all doing? Well, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here in this beautiful museum with all of you today. Let me start, of course, by thanking Secretary Scorton and Kim Sayet for their remarks and for their outstanding leadership and everything they have done to support us, to support the arts over these many, many years. I also want to recognize all of our dear friends and colleagues and our team members and our family who are here with us today. Too many to mention. Joe, and I know Jill's in traffic. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. We love you. Hi, Mom. What's going on? What you think? It's pretty nice, isn't it? I see so many people that I could thank, people who've been with us on this journey. We love you all. Thank you for taking the time. I have to tell you that as I stand here today with all of you and look at this amazing portrait that will hang among so many iconic figures, I am a little overwhelmed, to say the least. I have so many thoughts and feelings rolling around inside of me now. I am humbled. I am honored. I'm proud. But most of all, I am so incredibly grateful to all of the people who came before me in this journey, the folks who built the foundation upon which I stand. As you may have guessed, I don't think there is anybody in my family who has ever had a portrait done, let alone a portrait that will be hanging in the National Gallery, at least as far as I know, Mom. But all those folks who helped me be here today, they're with us physically and they are with us in spirit. I'm thinking about my grandparents, Rebecca and Purnell Shields, Southside, as he is known now throughout the nation, Levon and Frazier Robinson Jr. They were all intelligent, highly capable men and women. They have the kind of talent and work ethic that usually destines people for greatness, but their dreams and aspirations were limited because of the color of their skin. I'm, of course, thinking about my dad, Frazier Robinson III, man who sacrificed everything to give me and my brother opportunities he never dreamed for himself. And, of course, I'm thinking about my mommy, Marion Robinson, who is sitting in the front row, supporting us like she has always done, always putting herself last on her list so that she could give me and Craig and our children everything that makes today possible. I'm also thinking about all of the young people, particularly girls and girls of color, who in years ahead will come to this place and they will look up and they will see an image of someone who looks like them hanging on the wall of this great American institution. Yeah. And I know the kind of impact that will have on their lives because I was one of those girls. And when I think about those future generations and generations past, I think again, wow, what an incredible journey we are on together in this country. We have come so far. And yes, as we see today, we still have a lot more work to do, but we have every reason to be hopeful and proud. And I am truly grateful to have had the opportunity to stand alongside my husband and play a very small part in that history and in that future. But I'm even more proud of the extraordinary woman and artist who made this portrait possible. Amy Sherald. Not yet. I got more to say about you, girl. Now, Barack and I had the privilege of considering a number of outstanding portraitists, and I want to thank Bill Allman, Thelma Golden, Michael Smith, our team. We love you guys. I know you're out there, who guided us every step of the way. Oh, there you go. Of course, I could see you guys, but thank you. They guided us through every step of the way through this process. We never could have done this without you because you not only know your craft and all these folks, but you know us intimately. You knew what we were looking for and what we wanted to say. So thank you three, the dynamic trio. And with their help, we narrowed down the field to a few key artists who Barack and I then interviewed. And each of these artists had to walk into the Oval Office. Yikes. And I almost wanted to start off each conversation by apologizing for putting them through this process. I mean, just to get this job, they had to come to the White House, to the Oval Office, and get grilled by the President and First Lady. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So it wasn't lost on us how unnerving this experience was for each and every one of them. And when Amy came in, and it was her term, I have to admit that I was intrigued. I was intrigued before she walked into the room. I had seen her work, and I was blown away by the boldness of her colors and the uniqueness of her subject matter. So I was wondering, who is this woman? And she's so cute, too. And then she walked in, and she was fly and poised, and I just wanted to stare at her for a minute. She had this lightness and freshness of personality. She was hip and cool in that totally expected, unexpected kind of way. And within the first few sentences of our conversation, I knew she was the one for me. And maybe it was the moment she came in and she looked at Barack and she said, "Well, Mr. President, I'm really excited to be here, and I know I'm being considered for both portraits." She said, "But Mrs. Obama," she physically turned to me and she said, "I'm really hoping that you and I can work together." And after that, she and we started talking, and Barack kind of faded into the woodwork. And, there was an instant connection, that kind of sister girl connection that I had with this woman. And that was true all the way through the process, which is a good thing, because when someone is doing your portrait, they spend hours staring at you. Yikes. It's very intimate, the experience, so you really have to trust the person and feel comfortable enough to let yourself go. And Amy made that possible for me. We had that connection. So today, I want to thank Amy for being willing to put herself through this process, especially after it was leaked. I just felt for you, girl, to have to do that, right? To paint a portrait of Michelle and Barack Obama is like cooking Thanksgiving dinner for strangers. Everybody has an idea of what Thanksgiving dinner is supposed to taste like. The dressing that you love is the dressing you love. You don't want other stuff in it. And that's what it's like. People know what they feel and think and how they see us. So Amy had to interpret that and do it under the spotlight. So I can only imagine that it's been a little stressful for her, but she has handled it with all with remarkable poise and grace, which I think tells you a lot about who she is. She is obviously a woman of extraordinary talent, and it is thrilling to see her getting the recognition she deserves with all the awards and the calls from museums and buyers lining up to purchase her work. But even more important, Amy is a woman of extraordinary character and strength. Her path has been strewn with obstacle after obstacle. She's faced life-threatening medical conditions of her own. She's made tremendous sacrifices to care for the people she loves. She's endured the heartbreak of losing some of those that she's loved, and all through it, she kept going. All along, she stayed faithful to her gifts. She refused to give up on what she had to offer to the world. And as a result, she is well on her way to distinguishing herself as one of the great artists of her generation. It was a total joy. It was a total joy to work with you, Amy. I am so pleased and honored and proud of you. So it is my honor to introduce Amy to all of you today, the woman who created this beautiful portrait, Amy Sherald.
Good morning. Thanks for being here so early. Mrs. Obama, I want to begin by saying thank you. Thank you for seeing my vision, and thank you for being a part of my vision. I paint American people, and I tell American stories through the paintings I create. I find my models, I style them, and I photograph them. I then use that photograph as a reference. My approach to portraiture is conceptual. Once my paintings are complete, the model no longer lives in that painting as themselves. I see something bigger, more symbolic, an archetype. So approaching the commission with you as the subject of this painting is deeply connected to what I hold as my truth. This portrait delivers the same kind of symbolism. The dress chosen for this painting was designed by Millie. It has an abstract pattern that reminded me of the Dutch artist Piet Mondrian's geometric paintings. But Millie's design also resembles the inspired quilt masterpieces made by the women of Gee's Bend, a small, remote Black community in Alabama where they compose quilts in geometries that transform clothes and fabric remnants into masterpieces. Photographer and historian Deborah Willis wrote, "You have engaged the imagination of a new generation of writers and artists as we chronicle the commanding role you played in American visual culture." Mrs. Obama, you are omnipresent in that way. You exist in our minds and our hearts in the way that you do because we can see ourselves in you. The act of Michelle Obama being her authentic self became a profound statement that engaged all of us. Because what you represent to this country is an ideal. A human being with integrity, intellect, confidence, and compassion. And the paintings I create aspire to express these attributes, a message of humanity. And I like to think that they hold the same possibilities of being read universally. So I will always be grateful for this enormous opportunity to work with you. This experience has humbled, it has honored and informed me in ways that will stay with me forever. So thank you again for bringing light and clarity to my journey as a painter of American stories. And I truly consider today to be a defining milestone in my life's work. And I just want to say, without crying, a quick thank you to my mom for supporting me all the way through.
Thank you, Mrs. Obama, and thank you, Amy. President Obama, I know of all people here, you are aware that your wife is a tough act to follow. I hope, sir, that you're more prepared than I am. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that just 11 years have passed since Barack Obama launched his presidential campaign in Abraham Lincoln's hometown of Springfield, Illinois. In fact, it was 11 years ago this very week. Some of you might recall that when he addressed the crowd outside the old state capitol, he quoted a speech in which Lincoln observed the strange, discordant, and even hostile elements that America confronted in 1858. At the time of President Obama's inauguration, America again faced challenges that could be described in quite similar terms. A global economic crisis, wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, rapid technological progress, and the rising uncertainty that came with that progress. And during a period of such profound change in the country and the world, President Obama provided the steady leadership that millions of Americans were seeking. He was a voice of calm in times of chaos. He was a voice of comfort in times of grief. And he was a voice of confidence at all times. Confidence in the resilience of the American people and the promise of a better future for all. In one important sense, President Obama's historic election was a departure from America's past, but he also embodied the ideals that define some of the other presidents portrayed in these halls. Lincoln's secular faith in our national union, Kennedy's commitment to public service, Reagan's optimism that America's best days are still to come. For these reasons and more, Barack Obama was a very consequential president. He will long be the subject of admiration and study and fascination. And when future generations look back at this presidency, I believe that Kehinde Wiley's portrait will give them a unique window in the way that only presidential portraits can. A window into both the man and the moment when he led with such distinction. And with that, please join me in inviting President Barack Obama and Kehinde Wiley to unveil the portrait.
Woo! Well, good morning, everybody. It is wonderful to see all of you. How about that? That's pretty sharp. It is my great honor to be here, and I want to thank Secretary Skorton and Kim for your outstanding leadership at a couple of the crown jewels of American life and your extraordinary stewardship. I want to thank everybody who was here. Michelle and I are so grateful for the friends and family and former staff and current staff who have taken the time to be here and honor us in this way and soak in the extraordinary art that we're seeing here. It means so much to us, and I hope you're aware of that. We miss you guys. And we miss you guys, and we miss the way those who worked with us on this incredible journey carried yourselves and worked so hard to make this country a better place. Amy, I want to thank you for so spectacularly capturing the grace and beauty and intelligence and charm and hotness of the woman that I love. Special shout out to my man Joe Biden. An even more special shout out to my mother-in-law, who in addition to providing the hotness genes, also has been such an extraordinary rock and foundation stone for our family, and we are so grateful to her. We love her so much. Like Michelle, I have never had a portrait done of myself. I mean, the Hope poster by Shep was cool, but I didn't sit for it. Nobody in my family tree, as far as I can tell, had a portrait done. I do have my high school yearbook picture, which is no great shakes. And so when I heard that this was part of the tradition, I didn't quite know what to do. Michelle and I were somewhat confused. We were lucky to have some extraordinary friends and people with exquisite taste, Bill Ullman, Thelma Golden, and Michael Smith, who gave us the assist and helped us to consider a whole range of artists. And we had an immediate connection with the two artists that are sitting here today. I think it's fair to say that Kehinde and I bonded, maybe not in the same way, this whole sister girl, thing. I mean, we shook hands, we were, we had a nice conversation. He and I make different sartorial decisions. But what we did find was that we had certain things in common. Both of us had American mothers who raised us with extraordinary love and support. Both of us had African fathers who had been absent from our lives, and in some ways our journeys involved searching for them and figuring out what that meant. I ended up writing about that journey and channeling it into the work that I did because I cannot paint. I'm sure that Kehinde's journey reflected some of those feelings in his art. But what I was always struck by whenever I saw his portraits was the degree to which they challenged our conventional views of power and privilege, and the way that he would take extraordinary care and precision and vision in recognizing the beauty and the grace and the dignity of people who are so often invisible in our lives, and put them on a grand stage, on a grand scale, and force us to look and see them in ways that so often they were not. The people that Michelle referred to, people in our families, people who helped to build this country, people who helped to build this capital, people who to this day are making sure that this place is clean at night and serving food and taking out the garbage and doing all the other stuff that makes this country work, so often out of sight and out of mind. And Kehinde lifted them up and gave them a platform and said they belonged at the center of American life. And that was something that moved me deeply because, in my small way, that's part of what I believe politics should be about, is not simply celebrating the high and the mighty and expecting that the country unfolds from the top down, but rather that it comes from the bottom up. Families all across America who are working hard and doing their best and passing on the wisdom and resilience and stories to their children in the hopes that their lives will be a little bit better. And so I was extraordinarily excited about working with Kehinde, and let's face it, Kehinde, relative to Amy, was working at a disadvantage because his subject was less becoming, not as fly. And I want to say that it was, although those Michelle always used to joke, I am not somebody who's a great subject. I don't like posing. I get impatient. I look at my watch. I think this must be done. One of those pictures must have worked. Why is this taking so long? So it's pretty torturous trying to just take a picture of me, much less paint a portrait. I will say that working with Kehinde was a great joy. And he and his team made it easy. Kehinde, in the tradition of a lot of great artists, actually cared to hear how I thought about it before doing exactly what he intended to do. I mean, there were a number of issues that we were trying to negotiate. I tried to negotiate less gray hair. And Kehinde's artistic integrity would not allow him to do what I asked. I tried to negotiate smaller ears. Struck out on that as well. Maybe the one area where there were some concessions was, as I said before, Kehinde's art often takes ordinary people and elevates them, lifts them up, and puts them in these fairly elaborate settings. And so his initial impulse maybe in the work was to also elevate me and put me in these settings with, partridges and scepters and thrones and chiffon and mounting me on horses. And I had to explain that I've got enough political problems without you making me look like Napoleon. We've got to bring it down just a touch. And that's what he did. It's hard to obviously judge something that is a portrait of you. But what I can say unequivocally is that I am in awe of Kehinde's gifts and what he and Amy have given to this country and to the world, and we are both very grateful to have been the subject of their attention for this brief moment. So, Mr. Kehinde Wiley.
Yeah. So how do you explain that a lot of that is just simply not true? What is true is that this is an insane situation. To be able to stand on this stage and to look out at this crowd and to have this level of adrenaline flowing through my blood tells me that something special is going on. My whole life is driven by chance. Much of the work that I'm known for is just chance-driven, complete strangers in the streets. Trying to find people that have a sense of grace, some sort of je ne sais quoi, something that you feel will translate on a painting, on a museum wall. It's something that you know when you see it. You don't quite know what it is. And people are minding their own business, trying to get to work often, and I'll tap them on the shoulder and I'll say, do you mind if I paint you? Most people say no. It's tough in the streets to get people to recognize what the import or the gravity of art is. My job has been to slowly take these moments of chance and to try to weave them into something that means something in the language of art history. These big museums like this are dedicated to what we as a society hold most dear. Great curators, their jobs are to be the guardians of culture, to say this is what we as a people stand for. You know, growing up as a kid in South Central Los Angeles, going to the museums in LA, there weren't too many people who happened to look like me in those museums, on those walls. So as the years go on, and as I try to create my own type of work, it had to do with correcting for some of that. Trying to find places where people who happen to look like me do feel accepted or do have the ability to express their state of grace on the grand narrative scale of museum space. Well, that sense and that obsession with chance has gotten me here in a very strange chance sense. You, Mr. President, have found something in what I do, and what my purpose has been as a creator, as a thinker, as a painter, to be able to project out into the world this urge, this itch, this desire to see something corrected for. It seems silly. It's colored paste. It's a hairy stick. You're nudging things into being. But it's not. I mean, this is consequential. This is who we as a society decide to celebrate. This is our humanity. This is our ability to say, I matter. I was here. The ability to be the first African-American painter, to paint the first African-American president of the United States is absolutely overwhelming. It doesn't get any better than that. I was humbled by this invitation, but I was also inspired by Barack Obama's personal story, that sense in which he and I both do have that echo of single parents, African fathers, that search for the father, that sense of twinning. There is kind of like this echo of he and I in that narrative. When you look at this painting, there's sure an amazingly handsome man seated in the fore, but there's also botanicals that are going on there that nod towards his personal story. There's the chrysanthemum, which is a sort of state flower of Chicago, Illinois. There's flowers that point towards Kenya. There's flowers that point towards Hawaii. In a very symbolic way, what I'm doing is charting his path on Earth through those plants that sort of weave their way. There's a fight going on between he in the foreground and then the plants that are sort of trying to announce themselves underneath his feet. Who gets to be the star of the show? The story or the man who inhabits that story? It's all chance-driven. And Mr. President, I thank you for giving me a chance, and I thank you for giving this nation a chance to experience your splendor on a global scale. Thank you. You got it dead on. I was so in this zone, and talk about not recognizing the real source of the light. My mother, Freddie Mae Wiley, can you please stand? There is nothing I can say. This is really where it all starts. And we didn't have much, But she found a way to get paint and just the ability to shut up and breathe. The ability to be able to picture something bigger than that piece of South Central LA that we were living in. You saw it. You did it. Thank you.
Congress founded the National Portrait Gallery to collect and display the portraits of those who have made a significant contribution to America's history and culture. This year marks our 50th anniversary, and as Secretary Scorton mentioned, today, February the 12th, marks President Lincoln's 209th birthday. I want to thank all of the Smithsonian and especially the National Portrait Gallery staff for making today so special, with particular appreciation to our Chief Curator, Brandon Brame-Fortune, and curators Taina Catagol and Dorothy Moss, who stewarded both commissions. I sincerely hope that all of you here today will agree that the Portrait Gallery has an extraordinary mission to visualize the motto on the Great Seal of America, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. We hope that you continue to support our work, starting with this moment, by posting on social media using the hashtag MyNPG. Don't hold back on your excited, celebratory and awestruck praise, everybody. So I now invite President and Mrs. Obama, Kehinde, Wiley and Amy Sherald over to their portraits for 2 photographs, the first in front of the paintings with the artists and the second with all of those on stage.
Where do you want us?
In front? Just in front of the pictures, yeah.
How do you want it?
I think on either side of your pictures would be great.
Why don't we do this?
Yeah, and then
How's that? Is that good? Can you get both of me?